Ci sono dei seri sospetti che sia una bufala, vero? Lo dicono 2 Nobel, non io. Mullis, premio Nobel per la chimica. Duisberg, il più grande microbiologo del mondo, dice che l'AIDS, sindrome di immunodeficienza acquisita, non è causato dall'HIV. L'HIV nessuno l'ha mai fotografato, e quando a Gallo gli hanno detto portaci la prova che esiste, lui ha detto è un virus strano. Ma come strano? Si muta!
The evidence that it's sexually transmitted is very bad by now. It was predicted if it's sexually transmitted, it would spread in the general population. Because after all, sex is the basis of life. Prostitutes would be at high risk of getting AIDS for their business. That's their life to have sex. They make a living out of sex. And they don't die from.
C'è uno studio in Cina, è stato fatto appunto, si sono raccolti dei dati epidemiologici sulle persone che praticano sesso non protetto nei gay bar. Nemmeno un caso di HIV.
Y nos fuimos a ver a un virólogo de Barcelona. Como tampoco él podía responder a todas esas dudas que teníamos, llegó un momento que dijo, mira, os voy a decir una cosa, y esto tiene que quedar aquí, no puede salir de aquí. No se sabe nada del virus, no se sabe ni cómo infecta, ni el tiempo que tarda en infectar a una persona, ni siquiera se sabe si existe. Y esto que os acabo de decir, si lo volvéis a repetir, os tendré que incluso denunciar porque yo me estoy jugando mi carrera.
That's the nature of the HIV test kit. The test kit manufacturers, Abbott Labs and the 33 others that make these test kits, all say on their package insert that this test, originally made to check the blood supply for transfusion patients, cannot be used to detect HIV.
I had interviewed the world's leading HIV experts and discovered that the 2 benchmark diseases of AIDS have alternate explanations. Once again, I turned to Dr. Gelderblum, seeking proof of HIV's existence in the most recent images available.
Here you do not see anything about the details, but I would say it's probably a virus.
These are HIV here?
Yeah.
Oh, so are these HIV too?
Yeah, yeah.
Everything's
Probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
What can I tell you? You know, I mean, it exists.
Gallo said he had all these viruses, and it was a lie.
I think HIV totally has turned out not to be the cause of AIDS. HIV has turned out not to be.
Gelderblum's images, said to come from isolated HIV cultures, provided no proof for HIV's existence. So I asked Nobel laureate Dr. David Baltimore and Dr. Robin Weiss how they would isolate and photograph this elusive virus.
Well, didn't Dr. Gallo do that? I mean, he actually isolated it, so... Yeah. I mean, why should I do all of this? This is all textbook stuff you're asking me.
I'm not quite sure what's behind your question about isolation.
I don't want to be your textbook, you know? Okay. I got other things to do.
They're embarrassed. The scientists have been embarrassed about this. They know that it's flawed.
Millions of people take tests that are referred to as HIV tests. However, the idea that there is a laboratory test that can determine whether or not a person is infected with the virus is simply an illusion. The FDA has never approved a test kit that claims to be used for the purpose of diagnosing HIV infection.
I believe HIV, we can be exposed to HIV many times without being chronically infected. Our immune system could get rid of the virus within a few weeks if you have a good immune system.
Nobody was looking at the blood of an AIDS patient and finding it crawling with some new organism and said, hey, this is this virus that we call HIV now. All kinds of diseases started coming into the AIDS family faster than anyone should have been comfortable with, really. To go from 2 or 3 to go to 30 in a few years was like somebody should have said, hey, there's something wrong here and it's got to be financial. Things don't happen that fast in science. You don't suddenly notice that one new organism is causing every problem. I mean, it was a bizarre thing that happened. It really was. It didn't really have any precedence in terms of medicine before that, unless perhaps you could think of the possession by the devil stuff, right? You see, once you're possessed by the devil, anything that happens to you or anything you do is got to do with that, right? So it makes it easier for you to get tuberculosis, and it makes it easier for you to get uterine cancer. It makes it easier for you to get Candida albicans. And so all those things can now be called AIDS. Now, why would anybody do that? And why would any reasonable doctor start lumping together various symptoms into one pile and saying, all this is caused by HIV?
Esattamente.
Ecco, dottor Pisani, io le volevo chiedere una cosa, perché poi lei
poi ho
è
una curiosità
talmente
anch'io
esauriente
molto
nella
importante.
sua, diciamo così, nella sua esposizione che quasi non ha bisogno di domande, però volevo proprio sottolineare quello che è stato l'atteggiamento di Montagnier quando lei ha chiesto proprio al professor Montagnier perché
Sì.
l'AIDS è l'unica malattia in cui
Sì.
la presenza di un anticorpo significa malattia e non immunizzazione.
Sì, e allora io la prima cosa che ho notato è stato il suo imbarazzo dalla comunicazione non verbale, come si chiama in psicologia clinica. Ha cominciato un po' ad agitarsi sulla sedia, dopodiché, con tutto il rispetto, perché è una persona anche estremamente piacevole, ho avuto l'impressione che cercasse di dare delle risposte alle quali neanche lui credeva. Io ho qui davanti a me la trascrizione delle mie domande al professor Montagnier e addirittura arriva a dire abbiamo avuto un paziente senza anticorpi che è morto di AIDS. Quindi insomma, sarà a interrogarci se l'HIV sia la causa dell'AIDS quando non c'è ancora prova scientifica, e sfido chiunque all'ascolto, anche gli specialisti, costa poche centinaia di euro e richiede un paio di giorni. Prendiamo il sangue di un paziente cosiddetto infetto, portiamolo da un anatomopatologo, paghiamolo e facciamo fare le foto di questo virus, perché dopo 28 anni nessuno le ha mai viste. Le rappresentazioni grafiche così carine, così belle, così colorate, viste in giro per il mondo, sono fatte al computer, anche perché molta gente non sa che il microscopio elettronico non può fotografare a colori, ma solo in bianco e nero.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First, the probable cause of AIDS has been found, a variant of a known human cancer virus. Second, not only has the agent been identified, but a new process has been developed to mass produce this virus. Thirdly, with discovery of both the virus and this new process, we now have a blood test for AIDS. With the blood test, we can identify AIDS victims with essentially 100% certainty.
Thank you, Secretary.
And only then I started looking into it. I looked up a bunch of papers in science that Bob Gallo, I knew about him and had written. I figured, well, Gallo must have been the one to figure it out because he's the name I've heard associated with it. I looked at his papers and I didn't find anything in there that actually showed me that there was a fact now in science called HIV is the cause of AIDS, or even the probable cause of AIDS, which is all I would have expected, the probable cause of AIDS. Highly probable, because they were attacking the whole problem by then as though it were certainly the cause. So I'd expect it to be highly probable, but I couldn't find anything that said it was remotely probable even. It was possible, but it wasn't probable. And so therefore, it wasn't even close to what you'd call a fact. There are no really good experiments that would lead anybody who was at least maintaining a healthy skepticism to believe that HIV was responsible for this series of, not series, but kind of a loose confederation of diseases that people are now willing to call AIDS, right? It's a confederation of maybe 30 different diseases, all of which have existed in one form or other prior to the condition that we call AIDS ever being pointed out, and all of which have had some other explanation at one time or other. You know, to say that all 30 of those are somehow caused, in at least some cases, called AIDS cases, by a virus called HIV, I think I haven't seen any evidence for that. I haven't even seen anybody trying to bring evidence forth for that.
And he said he's been looking for that since, I guess, the late 80s, and he hasn't ever been able to find anyone that can give him a paper that showed, number one, isolation of HIV, rigorous formal isolation of HIV, and secondly, using Koch's postulates, demonstrating that HIV is a causal microorganism. Where is the original paper that isolated HIV so that nothing else was present, and they actually could go and find what the proteins were and the nucleic acids were? I think you won't find that paper because it hasn't been published yet.
I mean, I understand there are a lot of people, if you ask them about HIV causing AIDS as being a fact, they'll say, of course, it's indisputable. And the very fact that they will say it's indisputable might lead you to question their ability to understand scientific method. People that think any scientific fact is indisputable don't understand about scientific facts. Somebody was looking at the blood of an AIDS patient and finding it crawling with some new organism and said, hey, this is this virus that we call HIV now. All kinds of diseases started coming into the AIDS family faster than anyone should have been comfortable with, really. To go from 2 or 3 to go to 30 in a few years was like somebody should have said, hey, there's something wrong here and it's got to be financial. Things don't happen that fast in science. You don't suddenly notice that one new organism is causing every problem. I mean, it was a bizarre thing that happened. It really was. It didn't really have any precedence in terms of medicine before that, unless perhaps you could think of the possession by the devil stuff, right? You see, once you're possessed by the devil, anything that happens to you or anything you do is got to do with that, right? So it makes it easier for you to get tuberculosis, and it makes it easier for you to get uterine cancer. It makes it easier for you to get Candida albicans. And so all those things can now be called AIDS. Now, why would anybody do that? And why would any reasonable doctor start lumping together various symptoms into one pile and saying all this is caused by HIV?